Hey y'all! So in this video we are going to talk about the Microsoft Equation Editor. And so let's get started. So the Equation Editor is Microsoft's tool for adding fancy equations into documents. So they have it implemented in Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Pretty much those are the three you're going to need. So it's in all three. It's very useful if you need to include a little bit of math. All right. If you ever think you're going to be writing a lot of math and continuously so, I highly encourage you to learn LaTeX. It's a really challenging piece of software to learn at first, but it gets easier, and it's really useful if you're going to have to write a lot of math. If you're only doing medium levels of math, stick with the Microsoft Equation Editor. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to talk about creating an equation. All right, so you come up here, and this works on all systems. Right, so you go to the Insert tab, and you'll come over here to the Symbols area, and it's going to be this right here, the equation. You're going to hit the down arrow, and you're going to see it's going to give you a couple random formulas that they think might be helpful. Chances are you're never going to actually be writing one of these by itself, and so you're going to click down here at Insert New Equation. Now the reason I don't have that is because in PowerPoint you have to have the cursor inside a text box to add an equation. Alright, in Word that's not the case, but in PowerPoint you do. So we go back to Insert, Equation, Insert New Equation. Alright, and now you can see we can type our equation here. That means that you are now able to create an equation. Right? It's just something nice and easy. The other thing you can do if you're a fan of shortcut keys, which I am, particularly when I work with equations, is you can press the combination of keys Alt, N, E, I. So what Alt does is it brings up these letters and numbers at the top that correspond to different options. So N is the Insert tab, E is the equation, and then I, you see down there, is the Insert New Equation. And so by typing Alt N E I, you can now type a new equation. All right. So let's now talk about two kind of important distinctions that will confuse you if you're not careful. All right, inline versus out of line. If you write a sentence and you include an equation, the equation will be condensed to fit, quote, inline, just like this. Sum of I goes from 1 to 5 of xi. You see the I and equals 1 and 5 are kind of squished in front of it. That's so that it kind of fits mostly in the line. All right, but if you're writing stuff and you go to a new line to type the equation, it'll be displayed in a regular, quote, out of line format, like this, right? Sum I goes from 1 to 5 of xi. It's the same thing, but it looks very different, and it's because this one is in a completely separate line, right? This one, it has its own line. This one is part of this same line, okay? So now let's talk about how we can create equations, right? So we're going to start by just working our way through these equations one at a time, right? So this first one, numbers and symbols and stuff, you can kind of just type, right? So 5 plus, and then you can use just typing parentheses, but I want to show you all how to use grouping things. So to get parentheses, you can come up here. We see this bar here. This has all sorts of equation things that we might need. Right, so brackets here, you can do single brackets, brackets with separators in the middle, and then this is what we're looking for, and we want just the parentheses. And now you see it's given us this dotted box here, and that is kind of like saying, okay, this is the stuff that's inside this symbol, right? If you write it in here, it's inside the parentheses. So then we're going to do 7 minus. We're going to use a grouping sign again. This time we want the square brackets. And if you notice, it put the cursor kind of like here, but I just hit the left arrow key. And when it's only highlighting that dotted box, then you know that you can type and be inside of it, right? And then we just can type a standard equals 9. Oh, whoops. So let's talk about that. What just happened? So I wasn't inside the equation. Do you see how nothing's highlighted right now? That means I'm no longer in the equation editor. So it thinks it's just text. And when it's in text, it's inline, and it left justifies. So you have to make sure that you're inside the equation. So you see how the whole thing is kind of in that highlighted slight box. Now when I type equals 9, it knows that it's part of the equation. All right, so let's add a new one. And this time we're going to go for this 3x over 4 equals x squared. So to do this, we're going to use a fraction, right? We've got a couple nice ones here, but mostly we're going to stick with these. I usually like this one. So arrows, the left and right arrows, take you between the different pieces of the fraction. And then we can just type 3x, just with the keys. And then I hit the right arrow to get to the bottom. And then I type 4, right? Now, this is the trick. You got to watch where your cursor is, right? So now the cursor is still inside the box, so I can type equals. Now, we want to get an x squared. And for that, we're going to come to this script here. And if you hit down, you see it's got several good options for you. It actually has an x squared there for us. We could click. But we're going to use this one. We're going to use the superscript. And now you see you've got two boxes, one for the inside piece, which we'll type x, and then we'll hit over, and the top piece is going to be squared. Okay? There we go. See? It's not too bad, right? Now, let's talk about this one. Alpha plus or minus square root of beta equals x bar. All right, this thing looks a little bit scarier. And now we're going to come look at what we have here. So these are symbols. And these symbols are all sorts of things that you might find really useful. Right? So like plus minus, infinity, not equal, less than, much greater than, less than or equal to. Here, this one right here, the for all command, that's a pretty useful one. All sorts of exists. Here we go. This is a nice one. Element of. And if we hit expand, which actually let me show you again, that not this one, that shifts it down, which is helpful. But if you hit this more, the lower expand, it brings up the full menu so you can see here's everything that's in the basic math tab. And we actually have a bunch of other things here. Right? So there's a lot of different symbols that you can use. You can either find alpha and beta here in the basic math or in Greek letters, right? They're up there. So if you want to insert it, you just click it. And now we've got our alpha. And now we need to switch it back to basic math, and we need our plus minus. Now, for the square root, we're going to come up here to this radical button, and we've got a couple options here. We've got a cube root. This one is the square root, but it gives you the number 2. This one, if you wanted to do an nth root, right, and you wanted to specify what root it was, and then our standard just square root. So we're going to click that. Now, if I were to insert beta right now, take a guess at where it's going to go. Okay, let's see if you're right. If I click beta, it went outside. Did you get it right? So why did it go outside the radical? Because the cursor is not on that box. So that box there inside the radical, we had to hit the left arrow key once to get inside of it. Now that we're inside, we can click beta, and there it goes just as we wanted. All right, equals, and now there's a little bar over the X, and that's here in this accent tab. All right, the accent tab has a lot of interesting things. It has a dot, double dot, hats, tildes, but this is the one we want. We want the bar. And so we're going to click bar, and again, you got to hit the left arrow to be inside of that. And now we just type X, and there we go. We have now successfully entered that formula. So for our last one that we are going to be looking at, we're going to look at this large operator one, and you know that's what we want because it has the summation. And you see we've got sums, we've got products, fancy union, intersection signs. For the most part, you'll probably be up here working with summations. You can do just a lower limit. We want the lower and upper here, though. So again, you can just hit the left and right arrow keys to go back and forth. And now this is just simple. I equals 1, type n. Now, this is a subscript. So to get a subscript, we're going to come up here to this script option, and we're going to use this one. We want the subscript. And you go over, you get x, and you get I. So x sub I. Now, I'm no longer in the equation. Now I'm back in it. We're going to hit equals, and we want natural log. So that would be here in the limits and log. Right, and you can just click natural log 3. Right, so there we go. That's the basics of clicking and manipulating. The other tabs here, right, you've got integrals, your fancy closed integrals, all that stuff. Went over those. Function here, if you want sine, cosine, arc sines, hyperbolic. We talked about all of those. Operators, if you need something like this for some fancy work that you're doing. And then finally, you can actually insert a matrix. And they have some pre-specified ones like identity matrices. And then probably you'll want like something like with the brackets or parentheses, right? And so you can insert that. And it works the same way. You just hit the left to go between your different ones. And we'll hit backspace on that. And there we go. So that's clicking and manipulating through the equations. Now, if you're happy and satisfied, feel free to stop. But I highly encourage you to keep watching because I'm going to show you a couple tricks that might speed things up for you. So we're going to talk about keyboard methods. Okay? So it's really great to have your symbols up here that you can click and drag, but sometimes those are challenging to work with. Sometimes they're a little finicky. Right? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to recreate these, and I've written out the commands. This is exactly what I'm going to type over here. And I just want you all to be able to read this as I go. So what we're going to do is here in the equation, we're just going to type. I'm not going to use any of the things that are up here. I'm just going to type it. So we're just going to do, the first one's pretty easy, 5 plus open parentheses, 7 minus open bracket, 2 plus 1 close bracket, close parentheses equals 9. Right? That was easy, straightforward, exactly like you'd think it is. Right? Now let's look at this next one. So if I want to get a fraction, what I can do is the thing that I want on top, right, the numerator piece, I'm going to put in parentheses. So I'm going to say parentheses 3x, and then I'm going to type just the forward slash, right, the standard division key, and then 4. And now, here's the critical part. You have to type space. Okay, I'm going to type space and watch what happens. Microsoft has automatically figured out that what I had was a fraction, and by typing space, it converted it into fraction form. Okay, now I just type equals. Now I want x squared. If you hit x and then the little caret over the 6, shift caret, that caret means raised to the. So now I can do raised to the 2. And again, you have to now hit the space bar. And when you hit the space bar, it activates it, and it's now given us a superscript, just like we wanted. All right. Now, if you want to type these symbols, there are names associated with many of these things. To find out the name, you can actually hover over it, and you see there in parentheses the name to write. So like if we look at alpha, the name to write is backslash, and then literally how you spell it, A-L-P-H-A. So what happens? I hit the backslash, A-L-P-H-A for alpha, and you hit space, and it converts it into the symbol. Then, when I type plus minus, it automatically knows to make that into the symbol. Now, to get the square root sign, you can actually do backspace backslash SQRT. And if you hit space, it makes that symbol. You want beta, that's going to be backslash beta, space, and now if I hit space again, it's going to bring the square root symbol over beta, just like that. All right, I could have also done SQRT parentheses dash beta space close parentheses space, and it automatically knows then, okay, that's all going inside the square root. That's really helpful for if you're putting a lot of fancy stuff inside the square root, right, to use the parentheses. Okay, then we type equals, and now to get this x bar, you can actually type x backslash bar, and then hit space, and now it created a bar. But notice the bar's not on top of x. So we have to hit space a second time. The first space created the bar. The second space is going to activate it onto the x, like so. All right, so the space bar, when working with this stuff, really helps you figure out, okay, this is how I'm activating what I'm trying to do. So let's look at this last one now. This last one is dash sum. Now, to get a subscript, you use the underscore. Okay? So the underscore sign, notice when I hit underscore, it automatically created the summation symbol. Okay? Now, I want what's going underneath to be I equals 1. I'm going to put that in parentheses just because it's a little complex. So I equals 1, close parentheses. And now, we can hit space like that, but you see what happens is when you do that, it thinks you're done with the summation. Okay? So let's try that again. Dash sum, I equals 1, and now don't hit space. Instead, hit the caret to get the superscript, n, and now when we hit space, it puts both the bottom and the top on there. Okay, and now we're inside, and so we're going to type x, and to get that subscript I, you just use the underscore again, sub I, space, right, to activate it, and now we're out of that, equals, now, the natural log command, you literally just type ln, and it figures out, and then I hit space there, it knows that that's natural log. And then 3. There you go. All right. So if you think you're going to do this a little bit, it's definitely helpful to start learning some of the keyboard shortcuts. And then my last thing that I want to leave you with, don't be afraid to experiment and start over if necessary. All right, so if you're trying to create some complex fraction, x plus 1 over n over 4 plus y, right? Oh no, it didn't do it right. I'll be honest, I think it's generally, you can do something like this, right? If it's easy like that, great. Often it's easiest to just hit backspace on it and just start over, right? Just start over. It doesn't take that long, right? And now we know 4 plus y, parentheses, there we go, right? Play around with it. Don't be afraid of it. You know, try different things, work with it, and you'll slowly start to figure out how it works, and you'll get faster and faster at it the more you practice. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me. We'll see you next time.